on to the September 11th, 2019 Fieldwood Hills Board of Commissioners meeting. We will call this meeting to order. If you would please rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Pledge of Allegiance tonight actually kind of hits a little more deep, being that we are sitting here on the night of Patriots Day. And 18 years ago, the travesty that affected certainly the United States and the world, something that we will never forget. On that day, 8 EMTs, paramedics, 60 police officers, 343 firefighters, and 2,997 civilians lost their life. They went to work, they went on flights, they went to do their daily activities and didn't come home. And obviously this is a tragedy that will forever sit in our hearts. There's a ceremony going on right now in the town of Nags Head commemorating that, and there have been ceremonies throughout the nation today. So as we head into our moment of silence here, starting our meeting, we'll just please keep Patriots Day, those who lost their lives in that and those who championed the fight. If you'll keep those thoughts in your mind as we enter into our moment of silence, please. Thank you so much. We'll move on to our agenda approval. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda. Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, on our agenda this evening, we have 2 public hearings that we've scheduled, and our town attorney will lead us through both of these public hearings this evening.
Thank you, Mayor. As the Mayor said, there will be 2 separate public hearings conducted tonight, and the following rules of procedure will apply to these hearings. Public notice of each hearing was published in the newspaper and posted on the town bulletin boards in accordance with statutory requirements for the subject matter. A copy of the public notice has been filed with the town clerk for entry into the official record of the hearing. The town clerk will report all oral comments in a concise and brief manner. Written statements shall be recorded in a similar manner and made a part of the record of the hearing and shall be submitted in full to the town clerk. If speaking tonight, please limit your comments to matters relevant to the issues at hand and to a time period of 3 minutes. Again, there will be 2 separate hearings, so please choose to speak at the right one. A 5-minute exception will be made if there is a spokesperson for a group or if your statement is submitted in writing to the town clerk. All speakers must come to the microphone so that your statements can be taped. There will be no debates during the hearings, and please identify yourself and your address when you come forward. The first public hearing will please come to order, and this hearing is called for the purpose of the Fieldwood Hills Board of Commissioners to consider the following. An amendment to Chapter 153 zoning, Chapter 153.072 sewage disposal. And this is in regards to updating sewage disposal regulatory agencies. There is nobody that is signed up from the audience, so I will just call from the audience. Would anybody like to speak at this time?
Discussion on the board on this item A. Comments, input, questions?
I'm okay with the way it is.
Yeah, I'm fine with it. It seems pretty simple, just updating language, get the correct regulatory agency listed on there.
Yeah, I talked with Cameron today, and that's pretty much in a nutshell. It's just clarifying and bringing everything up to speed with current agencies would have to deal with.
A motion would be in order for,
I'll make a motion. We approve
the amendment to chapter 153 zoning, 153.072 sewage disposal, update sewage disposal regulatory agencies. The Board of Commissioners finds that this amendment to chapter 153 zoning, update sewage disposal regulatory agencies is consistent with all comprehensive plans or other officially adopted plans of the town of Kill Devil Hills that are applicable, and that the amendment is reasonable in the public interest because it will clarify outdated language in chapter 153 zoning regarding sewage disposal.
Thank you. There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
The second public hearing will now please come to order, and this hearing is called for the purpose of the Kill Devil Hills Board of Commissioners to consider the following. An amendment to chapter 153 zoning, chapter 153.070 stormwater management, the purpose being to clarify commercial and 1- and 2-family dwelling requirements and create maintenance requirements thereof. Again, nobody from the audience has signed up to speak, so I will just ask if there's anybody out there that would like to speak.
I have a question, or speak.
If you would just come to the mic, please.
Sure. I'm new to the area, so I'm just trying to get some information. And I understand there's,
Ma'am, will you please state your name?
yes, my name is Beth O'Leary, and I'm trying to figure out about, there seems to be, from what I understand, there's, Saga Homes is purchasing the properties or locations to put these bigger mini hotels. From what I'm trying to find out what's going on here as a new resident. Are these modifications or new amendments to address the issue of having these larger homes, single-family dwellings that have like 24 and 28 bedrooms? Is it to accommodate those?
We'll cover that in the discussion, but this is not specifically targeted for that. However, because it would affect any dwelling that exceeds 6,000 square feet, then it would fall within.
So it had to be addressed, these had to be modified to address dwellings that are over 6,000 square feet as single-family dwellings. So you had to make it, I guess, to change the zoning.
Well, but again, I'll stress, this isn't to target the large homes. This is actually to address the stormwater management issue.
But it's the stormwater that's coming off of, because you do have larger areas, they're gonna have, I'm just trying to understand.
Sure. Well, this would be not just for those large homes that you're referencing. It's gonna be any 1- or 2-family dwelling that exceeds the 6,000 square foot in lot coverage.
But since those are gonna be more than 6,000 square feet, and there are, I guess, I'm assuming several, they're probably gonna be built. I know there's one that's near where I am. Okay, well, I won't keep you any longer. Just curious. Thank you. I'm sorry? Oh,
Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to speak?
Rodney Bunch, resident 1207 Memorial Boulevard. I only have a question. Can you summarize what the change is, what you're doing?
Yeah, I'm gonna let Cameron, yeah.
I sure can. Previously in our stormwater management ordinance, it was very unclear for the way it was written. It read 3,000 square feet of, it didn't say coverage or gross floor area. This was just a housekeeping amendment to clarify what the ordinance was actually meaning. When we looked at the ordinance, it said 3,000 square feet, and that's not very clear for developers. Does that mean lot coverage or gross floor area? So this is just clarifying our existing ordinance. The way it stands right now, it's 3,000 square feet.
So what I hear you say, you're not changing the stormwater requirement, you're specifying what 3,000 square foot requires.
So it's clarifying that it's actually 6,000 square feet of lot coverage area. It's saying that if you have over 6,000 square feet of total lot coverage, then you are required to have a stormwater management plan.
You just answered my question.
Perfect.
That's when you require stormwater management.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Right, for clarification, I think that's when we are requiring the plan, the stormwater plan, the stormwater management engineered plan to be submitted. But all development requires stormwater management. But if you're building something smaller, you don't have to submit that plan. So, just a little bit of clarification there. Anyone else?
Anyone else?
I do have one question. Just a rebuttal. What about properties that are already over 6,000 square feet that may have not submitted? You're only saying for permits to be issued, or are you saying that this will have to be done for all properties that are currently over 6,000 square feet?
If this is adopted, it would go in place with today's date, and it would be for new or substantial improvements.
Okay. Thank you.
Open for the board for discussion, questions. Cameron's available too for questions.
I was reading right, it's also affects commercial as well, right?
Correct.
So it's not just large, it's
The-
commercial development.
The entire paragraph needed some clarity to it. It was not very clear. So yes.
Any other questions, discussion?
I have a quick question, more of a what-if scenario. I'd like to thank Debbie and Ryan, also Ryan later this afternoon I called, because when I read this, I also had a lot of questions and kind of a murky understanding. Just hypothetically, if somebody has a really large lot in the residential zone and they wanted to expand on their house, mother-in-law suite, accessory dwelling, and put them over the 6,000 square foot threshold, would they then have to submit a stormwater management plan, or because the house is already existing before this is not required?
It would have to be a substantial improvement for it to be required, which means it would have to be greater than 50% of the structural valuation of the current building. So for example, if the building was worth $200,000 and the addition was only going to be costing $50,000, stormwater would not have to be brought into compliance with a stormwater management plan. Now, if it was over the 50%, then yes, the site would have to be brought into compliance for stormwater management.
Okay, so my concern as I've been studying this is, will this be any way to inhibit somebody from wanting to make an improvement to their lot big enough to allow it?
Highly unlikely. Our average lot size is somewhere in the 8,000 to 9,000 square foot range, and our most restrictive lot, zoning district is the RL at 40%. It would be very difficult to get to 6,000 total square foot. If you used a 15,000 square foot,
Yeah.
it's got to be a very large lot, and it's got to be completely maxed out. At
If that were
15,
the case, I think it would be great for them to have to submit a stormwater management
Yeah.
plan, because now you've got that much lot coverage and
and you're talking a very large addition, if you're
Yeah.
talking to something that's going to be a substantial improvement as well.
Gotcha. I just think if everybody, they met every other rule and was able to do it, I hate for this to be.
Well, and we have many other ordinances that are written very similar to our, if it goes over 50% for zoning, the entire property has to come into compliance for zoning. If it's over 50%, it has to go into compliance for flood damage prevention as well. So it's not just stormwater, so.
Okay. All right. Anybody else?
I talked with Cameron today as well about this issue, and one of the concerns that I'd like to get him to talk just a little bit about it, was how many lots would this make non-conforming? Can you talk on that just a
Sure.
little bit?
Most of our sites that would be in that 6,000 plus lot coverage range would be some of our large oceanfront development. That's the only place you're gonna see that you're gonna have over 6,000 square foot in development and 1 and 2 family dwellings. There's probably a dozen or so that, that potentially could be non-conforming, but they already are using pervious pavement for lot coverage reductions, and it's very likely that could be brought into compliance. Now, most of these developments on the oceanfront have also been completely maxed out. It can't really do a substantial improvement, and that's when that non-conformity would come into play and be a substantial improvement. Our non-conformity section reads that if you have structural damage due to a fire, flood, or natural disaster, then it can be rebuilt to 100%. That would not fall under that scenario where it would have to be brought into compliance for stormwater. It would only be substantial improvement.
Other questions or comments? So we're ready to make a motion or take action.
I'd like to make a motion to approve Chapter 153 zoning, 153.070 stormwater management, to clarify commercial and 1 and 2 family dwelling requirements and create maintenance requirements. The Board of Commissioners finds that this amendment to 153.070 stormwater management clarify commercial and 1 and 2 family dwelling requirements and create maintenance requirements is consistent with all comprehensive plans or other officially adopted plans of the town of Kildover Hills that are applicable, and the amendment is reasonable and in the public interest because it requires owners of referenced properties to submit a comprehensive plan for the proper drainage and maintenance of all surface water to systems on and off the property.
Okay, there's a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second, any other discussion?
One question, you said that, I didn't know something, that it talks about maintenance of the impervious concrete. Is there anybody in this area that actually does that currently? How do they go about getting it done?
There are several actual inspectors, but a lot of times, the designing engineer, will do periodic stormwater inspections on such sites.
So how do they get the maintenance of the conduits? I guess is my question there.
There's guidelines from the state for how to maintain your particular stormwater control measure.
Can they power wash it or?
Yeah, I know, like,
Just
they have
curious.
this machine that comes at Lowe's at least once a month.
Mhm.
And, like, I don't know exactly what it does, but it's pretty loud. When they're closed, it goes up and down the entire pervious concrete and sweeps it and sucks it up.
I think it's sort of like a vacuum sweeper.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But depending on what kind of stormwater feature you have, whether it's a retention pond or permeable concrete, there's different maintenance requirements for all, but we need to be able to go and enforce if town staff sees stormwater measures not functioning properly.
I remember this coming, but, before the planning board back then, I was curious about that.
Yeah, and that was in particular to just pervious concrete, but this will be associated with with a actual stormwater plan. So we can go and inspect and get it in compliance.
Thank you.
We had a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
I thank that people planning for what they did on these 2 items there. The first one was more like a housekeeping item, but this was a little more complicated. I think you explained it pretty well. Pretty satisfied with it. Thanks, Dan.
Okay, this now brings us to the first time set aside this evening for public comment. This is an opportunity for anyone in the audience to address the board on any topic of their choosing. We do ask when you're called upon that you would approach the podium and identify yourself by name and address. We ask if you're speaking tonight, if you'll keep your comments to 3 minutes if you're speaking as an individual, and if you would try to keep those comments to 5 minutes if you're speaking on behalf of a group. We did have a sign-up sheet, so we'll start calling from the sign-up sheet, and then we'll call from the floor. Okay. So first, we'd like to welcome Meredith, I think Crockett, is that correct?
That's correct.
Hey, Meredith, welcome.
Hi. Hey guys, Meredith Crockett, 308 Ocean Acres. This is not my first time here, as you all know. Commenting on the speeding on Ocean Acres. Again, I had requested four-way stops at Harrington and Ocean Acres and Bell and Ocean Acres. I worked with you guys, came to a couple meetings, tried to get a few things done, talked to some people. Couldn't follow up due to some personal things that happened. However, in January, I did write a letter, and I think it was maybe 3 or 4 pages, dropped it off upstairs on the 2nd floor, outlining, obviously, the dangers of speeding and things we all know. Texting and driving is a huge issue. Many times, you can even be doing 28 miles an hour, and people are just glued down on their phones like this, not even paying attention. It's a really big issue on our street, as I'm sure it is on other neighborhood streets. I don't think stop signs are a huge request. I did get a notification on August 16th that there was a special projects and committee meeting being held on August the 20th. I had a 4-day notice in the middle of August, in the middle of my busy season for work. So needless to say, I tried to make the meeting and could not make changes to my work schedule. So I did not make the meeting. I got a follow-up email that said that my motion for stop signs on those intersections was basically killed or denied. I was not very happy about that, especially only getting a 4-day notice for the meeting, and then to note that it was done. I know several other neighbors have sent emails and talked to maybe some of you about this. You know, it kind of goes by the wayside. It's not the most important thing. I do get that, but safety of these kids is very important to everyone. And I'm a pretty diligent parent, but some of the parents in my neighborhood aren't. So it's very concerning to know that people are glued down doing even 30 miles an hour, which doesn't seem like a lot. You're I'm only going 5 over, but it's different between doing 60 on a highway when the speed limit is 55 and doing 30 in a neighborhood street when it's 25. So I would really like to ask that we revisit the stop signs on those intersections. Again, I have other neighbors that could not be here due to work. I have another neighbor that's here with his baby as well. He lives next door, Brandon. And so, yeah, I just want to revisit that and get that back in the front of your minds again to request those stop signs. I don't think speed bumps will help. I've asked the police for speed bumps multiple occasions this summer. I know 2 other neighbors that at least have called and requested the speed boxes. I have not seen one this summer. As a matter of fact, the first day of school, I had to call the police because my 3rd grader almost got ran off the road by someone after getting off the bus. First day of school. Absolutely ridiculous. So, I mean, I do call. I mean, how many times do I have to call the police? You know, they have better things to do. When a simple solution just to slow people down and make people aware is just to put a stop sign up. You know, it's a long, straight road. It's not difficult to identify how easy it is to find a solution to at least help address the problem. I don't know that it'll fix it totally, but I think it will definitely help. So I'm asking once again that we have stop signs put up at those intersections. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Martha Vaughn. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. I've been here before as well. My name's Martha Vaughn. I live at 1217C South Virginia Dare Trail. I'm a permanent resident. I'm here on behalf of a group of concerned citizens who have been talking with you all about the large housing that's going up, particularly in our historic neighborhood. Recently, I submitted to you some letters that I wrote to Raleigh, to the code enforcers there, and we did meet with them. They were very helpful, very sympathetic, and told us to go home, work with our municipality, and try to get the square footage situation looked at again for the 6,000 square foot limit on a single family dwelling. As far as differentiating between single family and commercial for safety issues like fire and EMS and such. They said that would take a code change, which we were aware of as well, and it could take up to a year to have that even addressed. So we're back, and we're fighting the fight for the 6,000 square foot limit on single-family dwellings. That being said, we came back energized, a little bit disappointed, of course, but much more informed. And we've organized as a grassroots group. We have some signs, which you may or may not have seen on 12. And these are available to anyone who wants one to put in their yard. We're looking for volunteers. We're looking for donations. And we have developed a Facebook page, which we are still tweaking, but you might want to look at Kill Devil Hills Against Many Hotels and Develop Smarter, Kill Devil Hills Against Many Hotels. There is an online petition. We encourage you to look at that and to sign it. And we ask the board again to consider the 6,000 square foot limit. And I do have one other question of Cameron. Okay, thank you. I wanted to know if you could share with us the permit status for 1213 South Virginia Dare Trail.
Do you mean to answer that response, or?
You can go ahead now, it's fine.
They currently have a demolition permit under review for 1213 South Virginia Trail, which has been denied for, they could provide us with more documentation of an asbestos report, and that's where we are now. That demolition permit has to be issued and demoed before we can issue a new building permit for a new structure on that property.
Is there a time frame?
Until they can get us the documentation that we need to be able to issue the permit.
Thank you, Cameron. Thank you, board.
Thank you very much, Ms. Vaughn. Next, we have Mr. John Woolard Sr. Welcome.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. My name is John Woolard. I live at 1229 South Virginia Dare Trail. I'm here tonight to ask you to give some serious consideration to this thing about the big houses, mini hotels that you have going up on our streets. I'd like to say that some 6 or 7 years ago, your Mrs. Guns came to me and asked me if I would open my house for the historic tour, promoting the historic Outer Banks and historic Kill Devil Hill. And for 5 or 6 years I have done this. I've opened my house to encourage people to come and look, to promote Kill Devil Hills and all of the history that's behind it. Now we have these big houses going up, and there is no history. I ask you to give some consideration to how you address this, because what you're doing is not in the public interest. It's not in the interest of Kill Devil Hills, and you need to make mighty sure that you think about that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Okay, that's all that we had signed up, so we'll call from the floor. Eddie, I think you had your hand up. Welcome.
My name's Eddie Goodrich, and I'm a business owner in the town of Kill Devil Hills. And I'd like to also address the proposed amendment regarding parking of houses over 11 bedrooms or more. And I believe that's planned, I think it's under the consent agenda to set a public hearing. What day would that be?
That's gonna be for our October, one second, we'll grab the dates, our October 16th. October 16th, 5:30.
Let me first of all start by saying, I don't know whether what you're planning is a good idea or a bad idea. I mean, obviously is to target the larger houses and to make sure and limit the size. And again, I don't know if it's a good idea or a bad idea. It may be. But what concerns me a lot is that on August the 12th, the Board of Commissioners gave direction to the staff, and now less than 30 days later, September 11th, you're setting a public hearing for next month, and it'll be the most sweeping, huge economic impact probably ever to happen in Kill Devil Hills. And not to mention that the two senior board members are not running for re-election and won't be here to deal with whatever problems it may cause in the future. I know you, obviously, this has all been public notice, but does everybody that owns an oceanfront lot in Kill Devil Hills realize that they're gonna lose $200,000 or $300,000 in property value? And then the taxes will be shifted from the oceanfront to the people in non-oceanfront, because the town will have to have the same amount of money. It's gonna also cause, all the houses that are over 11 or 12 bedrooms, I don't know, I think you can do it. If these rules are passed, and I'm not saying they're good or bad, I don't know. I'm not a real fan of big houses, but I am a fan of property rights. I think people have a right to buy a piece of, a lot to build what the North Carolina Building Code says and what the town allows. My question is, what's the hurry? When in fact, if this board makes this sweeping change, which is the biggest one that's been made probably in recent history to the town of Kill Devil Hills, and then you have an election and you have a new board in, then they have to deal with whatever ramifications they may be. So it seems like things are happening a little too fast, and I think we might want to slow down and think about what we're doing and make sure it's the right thing.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
I'm new to this, I'm curious what you're talking about since
I'm
it's
not-
so sweeping.
Sorry, and I recognize you're new, so I'm not in any way trying to,
I'm sorry.
that's okay, just as far as procedure. So during the public comment time, what we do is we give anyone who wishes to speak an opportunity to have their, but we can't get in a debate back and forth, even though, or questions, we'll call to the next person, and then the board has an opportunity to kind of discuss and respond to those. So
Oh, okay.
just for the sake of time and to keep the meeting moving, that's why we stopped that. So we'll see if Eddie needs to wrap up anything, and then, okay, all right. And then we'll call from the floor for the next person. So, yes, back, welcome. Thank you, Eddie.
My name is Brandon Jenkins. I live at 306 West Ocean Acres. I'm also commenting on behalf of what Meredith had brought up earlier. As you know, my daughter, she's 16 months old, full of energy, as you all had noticed while she was in there. Luckily, Meredith was able to take her out so I can speak for a quick minute. I have security cameras on my home that look out towards the driveway and the road, and it's a pretty consistent thing between probably 4 o'clock and 5:30. While everybody's getting home and getting off work, random people just driving down the road, checking the neighborhood out from out of town, to speed, and as Meredith said, looking down at their cell phones, not paying attention to the road. To me, it's a concern, and I ask you all to look at implementing and putting these stop signs in at the requested locations to help slow this traffic down for the safety of our children, and so I don't have a heart attack. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, who would like to speak next? Yes, ma'am, welcome.
Thank you. My name is Susan Burlow. I live at 1208 South Virginia Dare Trail. I'm a permanent resident here. I'm here to address the tired old issue of flooding. Once again, we flooded with a thunderstorm Monday morning in upwards of 12 inches. I am located one lot away from a drain, that the floodwater comes from Wrightsville Boulevard, Memorial Boulevard, from the, I guess that would be the west and the east, the west to the east, and then Atlantic Street and Martin Street. So it all comes from back there and this way and comes to our property on Virginia Dare Trail. There's one drainage pipe. All those neighborhood drains that go to this one drainage pipe is 22 inches in diameter. That's all, 22 inches in diameter. I measured it today. So at 10:15, when the storm was all done, I went out. There was a town worker there, and he was pulling the rake across the drain. It was clear. A neighbor went out to the ocean. That drain was clear. 7 hours later, I'm still standing in 12 to 15 inches of water in my yard, in my carport. So, it's, and this is happening continuously. And I know that there was Hurricane Dorian, so the ground was saturated. However, this has happened time and time and time again. So this isn't the first time. It's not just one thing or one-time thing. So I'm just asking that, we do something about it. We talk about it and talk about it. We need to resolve this issue. That water is pretty gross. It's got dog feces in it. It's got trash in it. I pulled out a trash can out of it. I have a picture, a pile of stuff I pulled out of that drain for 7-8 hours. All day long I stayed there. And it's not the first time. So I don't know what can be done about it, but I think we all know that we need another drain. We need another drain in that area, or this is just going to continue on and on and on. So I had some state workers stop by. They were like, "Oh, you're doing a good job. Keep up the good work." And some of the some of the town people stopped by too. And I don't mind cleaning the drain, but I do think we need to address it, and somebody needs to do something about it. And then we're talking about building this huge house right across from that drain. This is where the huge house is going. So it's going right across from that drain. There's going to be this long concrete driveway for 28 cars to park in. More flooding. All that's just going to drain this way, right back onto Virginia Dare Trail, right where we're talking about. So I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Okay, who would like to speak next? Welcome back.
You could stay all night.
Again, it's Rodney Bunch at 1207 Memorial. I live behind Susan that just spoke with you. And I promise y'all, I won't be back every month. I have actually sit in this lady's chair for 28 years and watched commissioners listen to these type of comments. It's very hard to deal with, I understand that. But I asked you to listen to what she just said. And the problem that I see, I don't feel like we should expect no water to stand in the yards. That's not what I'm asking. But when this water rains, 4-inch storm or whatever it is, and it reaches that level and it stops, and she's telling you water was coming out of the outlet over the ocean, but the water in our area is not going down any at all, then there's a problem. Something should be done to help resolve that. And I feel like I'm not a hydrologist, even though I've worked on many a plan for engineers. There's so much pressure at the highest point coming down that water's not getting into the inlets within the yards where we live. It's got to lower from the highest point first. And the only way that possibly could help is, again, and I know it's state roads, but it's city, town, municipality, it's your residents that also suffer from this. And I think I'm asking that you work with the state, petition the state to look at a resolution, which she mentioned the possibility within that same easement that you already have, that there's one pipe in it. If there was a second, sure the board would be able to get out of there instead of sitting there 7 hours and not lowering any at all. Bigger storm, need more water going into houses. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Does anyone like to speak next? Anyone else at this public comment time? Okay, there is a time at the end of the meeting as well. We'll move to response to public comment. So really three big topics tonight: the speeding and the concerns on Ocean Acres, the large homes, and the stormwater management. Any comments?
First of all, the speeding, I also live on, back in First Flight, we have First Street and Landing, which are both very similar to the situation. Anyway, very similar to the situation. I'm also happen to be on the Streets Committee, and we've talked about the situations with the engineer and Public Works and everybody, and it's not an easy situation. You just can't go slap up four-way stops. And I kind of thought the speed bumps were many places I've traveled, they call them sleeping policemen. Might be a good idea, and the state, and correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, you were involved in this conversation as well, I believe, that they were not deemed an acceptable method. So it's a difficult situation. I mean, something does need to be done, and it's not the only road. So we have been in discussion about it, trying to do something about it, as well as some of these other issues. So it's not like we've just tossed it out. It's difficult. As far as the big homes go, believe it or not, all these issues, believe it or not, we have been trying to work on for years, some of them. The big homes, we've tried to encourage the multi-homes with, what's the word? Cluster homes, thank you. We've been working with that for probably 5 years to try to entice builders to go in that direction. You know, I'm not saying I'm that crazy about the big homes. I am also a big property rights person. It's difficult to have two people about two lots side by side. One of them builds a big home. The other one say, well, now you can only build a home half that size, and you just devalued their property by $1 million or more. How do you justify that to them? So, you know, we get it from both sides. We get it from the people that want to build the big homes and the people that come down for weddings, and which generally is pushing that market, I believe, is the wedding industry that's so huge for our area. Personally, I'd much rather see a cluster home there, but we got to develop that further to entice the builders to go in that direction. Third one was the drainage. I'm not sure that's the same place that we had talked about, but the town, our town is one of the only towns that has an overall streets plan with an engineer and all that, and we're working on that constantly. And when we do a road, they generally try to repair the drainage and water lines and all that at one time as an economic feature as much as anything. Some of those pipes are going to DOT drainage, which, can we even change those, Steve, or we have to go through the state? I know this is an issue in a couple different spots. I'm not if he could, that would be great, because he knows a lot more about it than I do, but.
Please, Steve, go ahead, because he also can
We
provide
have to have
acres.
large discussions about the drainage issues. And it's getting better, it's getting way better.
Not at our place.
Townwide, excuse me, we're looking for we're trying to help everybody. Thank you.
That specific pipe that they're mentioning is the Martin Atlantic outfall. A couple things to point out. I think we're missing it if we characterize Monday morning's thunderstorm as just a thunderstorm and don't look at what we had with the hurricane, fully saturating the soils, and then having that 4+ inches all in an hour and a half, and the sand couldn't take anymore. And so we saw runoff. It was terrible. It was a mess. But yes, the 3 ocean outfalls, the Lake Drive, the Martin Atlantic, and the Balm Street are NCDOT outfalls that I think date back to the 60s. And they are undersized for modern standards. So, and I want to thank Susan. She's out there in her boots. Every time I go to check the Martin Atlantic, she's got a smile on, she's raking, keeping it clean. And it's a bright spot in my rainy day.
I have a picture of the debris.
Surrounded by all the misery. So yes, and we had a meeting in April. Commissioner Gray coordinated with the other mayors, and we sat down with Jerry Jennings, Wynn Bridges, Alan Moran, and we talked about ocean outfalls. And I brought up the fact that they're undersized. And I'm not sure that was in April, and I haven't had a response, so I don't know where that stands. They did, 2 of them were in disrepair, Martin Atlantic and Balm. They did come down the Wednesday before the hurricane and did some emergency opening. And I was pleased that they stayed open continuously Wednesday night, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and remained open Monday and Tuesday. And you did see great relief. I was a little disappointed that the Balm Street was flooded. Clark and Calvin, there were several side streets along Memorial that were flooded early Monday. They got better throughout the day Monday. The Martin area was still flooded at 5 o'clock, but 7:30 Tuesday morning, it was back in the ditches half down, and had recovered.
And Steve, I know you and I had a discussion recently, and the size is the issue. I mean, the size of that outfall that you're talking about, because you had given me a drainage rate, and it's, I mean, when you have the massive amount of rain in a short period of time, it just cannot keep up. So unless there's something we can do to either get an additional pipe or have a larger size drain, we're gonna have this issue.
Yeah, and many times we get away with it because of the sandy soils that they'll absorb, but the sponge was full on Monday morning after Dorian. And that was in the, I think, 2011 stormwater plan. Pete had identified the drainage areas and those 3 outfalls, and it, don't quote me, but it was 15%, 20%, the most was 30% of modern design standards. And internally, we've been using our discretionary funds to try to strengthen the North Memorial. As late as June, we were behind Secrets, formerly the Portacall, taking out 2 rotted 24-inch pipes and putting 48-inch pipes in. And that ditch, I think that limited the time that you had water, because the ditch flowing north to Woodmere and across the monument and out at Oyster Point was as high as I've seen it. It was full 48-inch pipes moving 2 feet per second north as fast as it could go. So, but you get all the water from the schools come up through Goddard and Holly. The Boundary Street ditch feeds in, so it's a big drainage area.
I mean, I think we're back at having to try to continue advocating with NCDOT, which we haven't, despite numerous meetings. I mean, over this last year, we've had 3 separate meetings. We've had the mayors engaged, and we all had our priority list, but there's not been, other than those emergency repairs just before the storm, there hasn't really been anything tackled on that wish list that we turned into the state back in that meeting. Go at it again.
From the meeting, I'd be glad to either call or have the town send a letter requesting an update. I think that would be the thing to do, would be to send a letter to Alan Moran or Jerry. Say, we need to get back up to speed on these issues and find out what we can do. We've certainly done our due diligence in trying to address it.
Yeah, and I mean, really, you're standing up there, and later in the mayor's agenda, I wanted to thank you and your team, because, you know, we couldn't make the problem disappear, but you guys worked so hard, and you know, you were out there in the water and in the trenches throughout this, so thank you and your team for all of your efforts. So,
That's a question.
you're not really supposed to right now.
Started something. Is, the fact, these ocean outfalls were put in after Ash Wednesday storm, I believe, by the North Carolina Department of Transportation. Was the ocean actually pushing the water back? In other words, it drains water to the ocean, but water can go two ways. Was the ocean pushing the water up the drain?
I was out Friday afternoon from 2 till 6, you know, as the wind started to die down, and I would describe it as pulsate. You could see the water in the drop boxes at 12, slow, slosh back and forth, and then pull seaward, and then pause, and then, so that was the effect of that high tide and the surf pushing at the end, slowing it down. But at low tide, it's racing through.
It definitely has an effect.
But I don't think it's fair to think with this storm that we took water from the ocean. It you know, as those set waves hit it visually, it slowed down to the box at 12, but I didn't see any water coming back from the ocean.
He did
Yeah.
let out. Other comments, did you?
Thanks for like saving me, basically. My only point is that's, you know, you might not think so, but we are aware of a lot of these issues, and we're trying to do what we can do. I mean, sometimes even there's the stoplights on, I forget what intersection, DOT's agreed, say, yes, we need a stoplight, but they don't have the money to do it right now. So sometimes our hands are tied, I mean, legally and economically, basically. And we're trying to do it from the town perspective on all the improvements, like, for example, down in the Whispering Pines area, that's just more fun. And I had a lot of people say that the improvements that we did there, were phenomenal, because there was no flooding in that particular area. But we can only do so much because of the funds that we have, you know, and do it with our improvements as they come up. So, like Skip was saying, we are putting our best foot forward from the town's perspective, trying to solve these drainage issues. It's a huge problem.
I was gonna mention, same thing you mentioned, that they did the traffic study for the traffic light on the bypass, and it was at our August 14th meeting when we got the response that, yeah, there's one needed there, but we don't have the money. And we've been through this with these outfalls and with other issues, and people say, well, why don't we, you know, why doesn't the town put up the light, or why doesn't the town do the outfalls? Well, once you start doing that, and the state realizes, hey, they're gonna do it themselves, so we're just gonna say we can't do it. So you have to be very careful about saying that we're gonna put in an outfall or we're gonna put in the traffic light, because then we're taking on that responsibility, and they're not too reluctant to let you take it on.
Right.
So that's something that, another thing that makes it more difficult.
Even right down to this, it's another issue, but the sidewalks on the bypass, we've done a tremendous job, but we have to be careful not to overstep our bounds because of DOT on that as well. We'd rather have larger sidewalks and all that, but they may have a bigger plan, they might be tearing them up in a couple of years, and, you know, so we have to be a little careful how we deal with the state. I'm not happy with everything the state makes me do either, but.
Well, I do think, as early as tomorrow, we can get a letter to, I think we send it to Alan. He'll communicate obviously with Jerry and start there. And we can cite the discussion that ensued tonight at our meeting. And obviously other comments. I know the staff fielded a lot of calls on Monday when the rain was falling, so
Yeah, I think Derek told me he had 3 pages.
3 pages of calls, yeah. Oh, so 4 pages now. Okay. All right, well, we'll reference those concerns and see what we do with that.
Yeah, it's been tough. The water table's so high. There's streets that have been improved for 50 years that don't have any formal drainage. And if you've got a low area in there and no drainage, it's been misery the last couple of days.
I think in that area, there's a Facebook online, I think it's a petition that's going around, but basically it's citizens in that area just voicing their concerns, and exactly that, they're on that area that's really 50-plus year road, so we can reference that as well in the letter. Thank you. Other comments tonight regarding public comment? Anyone else have anything to say?
I like the idea of the letter. I think it's a good first step.
And I will real quickly chime back in on the larger home challenges that presents. And even tonight at public comment, you heard almost kind of two different perspectives on it. This isn't something that the town is jumping into in a decision. We've had meeting after meeting. We've held specific public forums looking at the larger home. We held like a work group looking at it for solutions. And so within the past few months, we've had more tangible solutions that the board and the planning board could look into and address. So it's definitely not on a whim that we're looking into this. Yes, I'm not running again, and Mike's not running again, but that's two of us. So, I think that as decisions are made, if they are made at our next meeting regarding some of these things that are put forth, it's something that we feel would be in place for the greater good of the town, and whether we're sitting here or not, they would be decisions that would be in the best interest of the town. So we'll see where that goes, but I'm happy that we have something at our next meeting that we can look at that continues to move forward on an issue that we've been trying to tackle for many, many years, almost as many years I feel like I've been sitting here. So we'll see where the next meeting takes us, assuming that we agree to schedule the public hearing tonight. But I applaud the work, Ms. Vaughn, that you and your crew are doing. You're obviously passionate about it, and I get that. So I appreciate your efforts, and at the end of the day, we'll see where the board takes the decisions next month related to this. Okay, anything else before we move on? Okay, we will move on then to new business. Our first item under new business this evening is under appointments. We have two appointments to the Zoning Board of Adjustment. Jason Self's term as a regular member, and T. Dylan Heikens' term as an alternate member on the board. Both of those terms expire in October. Both have expressed their desire to be considered for reappointment to another 3-year term. So, open the floor for discussion from the board.
I'm fine with both of those.
I'll make a motion that we reappoint Jason Self as a regular member of the Zoning Adjustment Board for another term, and T. Dylan Heikens as an alternate member for another term on the Zoning Board of Adjustments.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The second item under new business is the authorization to submit a grant application for the Baum Street Sidewalk Project. Cameron can probably speak to that for us this evening.
Yes, I can. After reviewing several options, town staff has identified installation of a sidewalk on Baum Street to Fox Street and Fox Street to Hillside Drive for the 2019-2020 fiscal year. This will complete the Centennial Path Loop, which will provide safe path through a busy area of town and could make the project eligible for grant assistance. Tonight, we're asking for the go-ahead to apply for the Dare County Tourism Impact Grant, which would be a 75-25 grant funding for this project. Attached is an estimate from American Engineering for this project. We're also doing a project along 6th Ave this fall, correct? This fall. This year as well, so being in conjunction with that.
You mean paving in the street?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
So discussion tonight? This is basically staff with our approval would submit the tourism impact grant. Discussion, input, thoughts?
I think it's a great direction. We discussed it before, the street committee again, maybe. And, yeah, I mean, I think that's a great idea, and I'm all for it.
Yeah, I was at the street improvement special project meeting, this was really elaborated on. I was excited at how we have 2 existing paths that are now gonna be interconnected, really. When you think about all the pedestrian traffic on Ball Street, if you have kids and families coming to and from school, it's a nice thing. So, exciting stuff.
Sure, the school will be happy. Okay, then we would need a motion, please.
So moved.
Okay. There's a motion to authorize staff to submit the grant application, the tourism impact grant. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is second. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, thank you. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on then to committee reports. Anyone have any committee reports this evening?
Bill, I just wanted to remind everybody that we have the West Side meeting coming up on the 23rd at 6:30. And hopefully we will have some good discussion about the Hammond Park. I'm real excited about that, and staff has done an excellent job of getting us all kinds of information that hopefully the committee will move forward with, and may even bring that out separately and send it to the board rather than waiting until the end, but we'll see what the committee decides. But that's the 23rd at 6:30.
Great. Commissioner Gray is referencing the West Side Recreation Committee that's meeting, so that meeting is open to the public if anyone's interested. So.
Commissioner Gray and the survey associated with it. If you
Yeah,
can-
the survey, yeah, speak
Yep.
to that.
Yeah, you'll see in your chair, there's a handout for a survey we have live on the town website regarding Hammond Park. It'll only take you about 3 minutes to complete, but any input would be great. We've got, I think, over 200 submittals this far, so we'll keep it up for about another week.
And Cameron did the all fundamental work on the survey, and it's a really interesting survey, and it's gonna give us some good information, so thank you.
I asked Cameron a question.
Absolutely.
Speaking of surveys, you didn't happen to come across a survey of the area where the disc golf and the sound coincide by any chance? I would still at some point like to, for the idea of maybe a walkway to the sound and that type of thing, but
We'll be talking about the ball track again in the West Side Recreation Group.
I think that's phenomenal.
We'll be doing a survey for each park. Yeah, we'll do one of these surveys for each park too, so we'll get a fresh one.
Okay, thanks. I think they've got a really strong committee, a lot of committed people that are really interested. Yeah, I think I'll to thank Commissioner Gray for that, ramrodding that.
Bigger than me. I think it started actually with Commissioner Hogan, and some foresight that he had in putting some of this stuff into play. And we have a lot of citizens that are, excited about it. So it's gonna be good stuff.
Yeah, you and I met this spring and talked about it, I handed you the torch.
Yeah, well, thank you as well. I think they're moving in a great direction there.
Any other committee reports?
Would it be appropriate, we have 2 committee leaders in the audience right now, to invite them to the podium just to share any updates from the Community Appearance Commission or Neighborhood Watch?
Absolutely. Are you either Sue or?
Sorry to put you on the spot, but.
Either of you like to speak?
You know I can always come up with something.
This is Sue Kelly, the chair of the Community Appearance Commission. Welcome, Sue.
Thank you, Mayor. I was planning to stand up at the second public comment to let you all know that the next Community Appearance Commission meeting is scheduled for the 26th of this month. That's the 4th Thursday, which is the time we try to meet after skipping the summer so people can do their jobs during the heavy season. Things are going very well, I think. We have those lovely kick butt accesses for the butts. That is a separate task force of the CAC, but of course it's all part of the same thing. And they're up at the accesses, and I think they look really great. And I think we need to make sure we give a lot of appreciation to our town staff and to the Surfrider Foundation for getting those done. And we have already had some people who want some of them, are interested in them. So one of our tasks will be to figure out exactly where we can do them and how we'll get them financed and done. But they look real nice. If you haven't seen it, it's a blue tube. It's about a 5-inch PVC pipe painted blue and with a nice sign above it. And it's generally attached to some 4x4 that was already there with some other signs on it. But let me also mention this because the CAC meeting, which is on the 26th, is at the beginning of the process of our appearance award that we give every 2 years to a business, the most attractive business, the most improved business, and also we've got a category for businesses that are in a strip mall type situation. And the group will be meeting to throw out suggestions, and then we have a whole set of criteria that we follow. It's an interesting process, but I mention this to you because if any of you or you know anyone that think there's a building around, a commercial building around town that should be considered for this award, I would really love to hear from you about that. And I just want to say one other thing too on the question. I think this whole question of floodwater drainage is really, it's a serious problem. But I see how this town is approaching it. And 10 years ago, my street was fixed. And it was all, people across the street from me were constantly having water under their homes. And the town was able to put in drainage and fix it. So it's a process. It's going to take a while. It's getting harder. And as Steve knows, because I saw him right at the corner today of Raymond and Wilkinson, where there was a hole in the ground for a pipe that was too old. I walked over there to talk to him and saw it, because that's a block from my home. And they were there, and they were doing what they needed to do to get it fixed. And luckily, nobody was hurt by it, because they were able to jump on it really, really quickly. And the last thing I want to say is that if we paid somebody a whole lot of money to do something positive for this town, it couldn't have been any better than that Channel 3 CBS affiliate in Norfolk's report Monday night. I thought it was fantastic. So to all of you who were involved in that, congratulations. Terry, you sounded great. Skip, I think I saw you standing on behind the truck, shoving stuff in, and I'm sure there were others of you all that were in it too. It was fantastic. So congratulations for that. Good job. And thank you very much. I think that's it for me.
Sue, I have a quick question, Sue.
Yeah.
Is there any feedback? I'm just really curious. I love the Kick Butt program, the whole thing. Have we got any idea how much those tubes are being used? Is there any feedback on that? I'm hoping to a great extent, but I'm just curious if people are actually knowing what they are and using them, and I hope so. But
I think I can say pretty assuredly that there's not massive use of those things. I don't think they've been there long enough, and I think we need to continue to do the other publicity that surrounds it, such as the stickers and info that we get out through different ways. So I don't know that we can say yet. And I really don't think anybody has done a whole lot of checking on them to see.
you gotta believe everyone that's in the tube is not on the beach, so regardless, it's a great thing.
Certainly that's a hope.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Colleen,
And
welcome.
before she starts, the banner is being worked on. And hopefully we'll have it pretty quick here for you.
Awesome, thank you,
So we're
appreciate
trying.
that.
We're trying very hard.
Thank you. You've been just great. I appreciate it. On behalf of the Kildova Hills Neighborhood Watch Group, we have our monthly meeting next Thursday in this room at 6:30. Everyone is welcome to attend. We are going to pick up canvassing again in October once the weather cools off a little bit so that we can all stay happy and healthy and hydrated. We've got all kinds of material ready to go. Everybody's super excited about it. Our t-shirts are in. We're going to be at the ice cream social. We're going to be at the Halloween parade. Again, just sharing information. Speeding is a big piece of that. We knock on doors and say, hey, don't speed in your neighborhood. So we're going to try to continue to pass that word as well. Interestingly enough, through the storm, we gained probably 40 new members of our Facebook group, so we're now over 300 people. And these are people who actually live here or own a home here or a business here. So, if everybody's sort of out there and they just want to be looky-loos, we're able to kind of weed that out. We want to make sure that the information that we're sharing is really meant for the greater good. And everybody seems to be getting a really good response from it and feeling positive about it. So I really enjoyed managing that process. And in saying that, I definitely want to thank you, Mayor Davies, for everything that you did throughout the storm. I know it was just a wackadoo. It was coming, it was not coming, it was coming, and then it came. And, Ocracoke could very easily have been here. And I think that we were as ready as we possibly could have been. And in that same vein, your job is not easy. You want everyone to be happy, but it's just not possible. But I see and recognize and hear you all working towards the greater good. Sheila and Mike, I have no doubt that even though you won't be sitting in that seat after the election, that you won't continue to campaign for, great things happening in Kildova Hills, and that you'll stay involved. And your dedication to this town, it's unparalleled. So I want to thank you all for everything that you did through the storm and what you've been doing over the past couple of years. It's really impressive. Thank you.
Thank you, Colleen.
Okay, I think that wraps up committee reports. We'll go to commissioner's agenda and start with you, Commissioner Gregg. Do you mind? Start with you.
First thing that I want to talk about on the commissioner's agenda is I want to congratulate the town manager and her team. I was so impressed that after the storm, I saw automatically all the folks from Public Works, they were out in the streets picking up debris, and you kind of, you take that for granted. You kind of say, well, they're going to do that. They're going to clean up, and they're going to get out and check the drainage. They're going to do all this stuff. So you take that for granted. But then I saw the planning department, and they were coming out through the neighborhood doing assessments and, checking on people and seeing what needed to be done. And to me, that was the first time I'd seen that. I'm not saying that they hadn't been there before, but it was a welcome sight. And they went through the neighborhoods and pretty much checked everything. So Debbie, your team did a great job, of getting our town back up and running again, very quickly. So all of you are to be commended, the police department, the fire department, they were there as well. On Friday, and this might take a minute. Imagine that, right? On Friday, September the 6th at 11:07 p.m., I received a text message, and it was from Donna Roy. And she had indicated that she had purchased a lot of water that she wasn't going to use because of our situation with the storm, but she was thinking that maybe we could collect a lot of water from people that had done the same, put together a relief effort for our neighbors to the south. First thing that I did was I contacted the mayor, and she had a control group meeting coming, and she said that she would discuss the possibility of establishing drop-off points where we could collect these relief items. And I commend you. You acted very quickly, and you put together a pretty good plan where we could set up these drop-off points. And I could tell right from the beginning that we were going to have a lot of stuff come in. So I started thinking to myself, where in the world are we going to put this stuff? How are we going to get it south and all this stuff? So I contacted, I like to call him Superman, Rodney Rawls. And Rodney told me, he said, well, I got an enclosed trailer. He said, and, we could use it, to collect these items in. And I said, well, how big's your trailer? And he said, 16 feet. And I said, wow. I said, I don't think my truck will pull it. He said, mine will. And, so he donated his truck and his trailer. The next thing I knew, I said, well, we're starting to get some people saying they're gonna bring supplies in, we're gonna need another trailer. And, so I called, Commissioner Jones, and he said, well, I don't really have a trailer that's suitable, he said, but I'll come help you. And so he did. The outpouring of support from the town was phenomenal. The fire department, was just beyond belief. The chief came over, and as we were working and collecting all this stuff, he was passing out cold bottles of water to everybody, and checking on us and making sure that we were squared away. We had, folks from the police department that came out and helped us. The outpouring from the community was just phenomenal. The end result was that we had a 35-foot trailer, and that's a huge trailer. 35 feet is a long trailer, and we had it full of water and hygiene supplies and paper products and non-perishable foods, and we had a 16-foot trailer. The trailer was so full of stuff that we couldn't actually pull it. The guy came over with an F-350 truck, which is a pretty big truck, and he came to me, he said, look, my truck don't want no parts of this. So I contacted a fellow with Proto Towing, and we actually got a rollback record that came up and hooked onto this. And I said, wait a minute, you got a flatbed on that rollback record, why don't we fill it with water as well? So we did, we filled up the whole flatbed of the record. And the long and short of it is we took a lot of much needed supplies to not only Hatteras Village, to the fire department there, and then we did a subsequent trip to Frisco to show you how much they needed that stuff. As we were unloading it, and poor Skip, I worked him to death. I looked, he had a lot of sweat coming off of him a couple times. And, but when we took this off, we filled over 14 pallets in the Frisco Fire Department. And as fast as we were putting it on the pallets, they were turning around and giving it out. I'm proud of Kildable Hills. Did a great job. We met a lot of people. Mayor, I've got a list of people that donated their time, and I want to read these out if I can. And I've talked with you, and you've indicated you're going to send them a letter of appreciation. I think that's well deserved. Donna Rourke, Mayor Sheila Davies, Rodney Rawls, Skip Jones, Amanda Hooper, Neil Bloomer, and Gene Bloomer, Jeff Pesavini, Charlie Parker, Kira Waters, Lana Waters, Brian Brissy, Laura Brissy, Cole Brissy, Phil Wolf, Chief Talley with the Kildable Hills Fire Department and the staff. Chief, y'all did a great job. And also the chief with the fire department, with the police department, and the policemen that came out and helped us as well. Chief, we appreciate that. Thank you so much. Lisa Brickhouse Davis. And I haven't even started on the people that donated the waters and all that stuff. Commissioner Wimley, him and Walgreens donated water to the efforts. It touched me so much because it was overwhelming. It was overwhelming. Kildable Hills had a proud day. And it was very good.
Thank you.
That's all I have. I hope that weren't too long.
That's great, and thank you so much for all of your effort. It's definitely something to be proud of. Skip?
He ran right into something else. I just
Did
grab
he
hold
steal
and
your thunder?
I just grab hold and hang on.
Great.
I think everything's really, well said so far. I would like to thank Mayor Davies and the control group for your leadership during and before and after the storm. I want to thank you personally for your Facebook page, because that was my lifeline to what was going on through the whole process. And phenomenal communication, not just here or to Dare County and everybody who was worried about us beyond. So we thank everybody. Thank you, Commissioner Gray, for phenomenal leadership. You know, you again to show what this community is all about. So thank you, sir. That's all I have.
Can't do it without your guys' support.
Yeah, I echo those comments, and I appreciate everything that you guys have done, and staff, of course, and all the departments, what they've done. I saw them out on the streets too, and talked to several of them. The level of dedication has never ceased to amaze me. I've talked about staff a lot. I'm very impressed with their what they do all the time, especially in time of crisis. And it's a great thing to see, and especially I want to mention our mayor, because being a member of the control group too, besides being the mayor, it's a lot of, and the health department director, she had a lot to do these last couple of weeks, so kudos to her. Thank you for what you do. And I have the video for the tourism board meeting. Would you like to see that?
Absolutely.
You have that ready over there, Cameron? This is our August meeting, tourism board meeting recap. It won't be as long as what Terry did.
Hi, Lee Nettles here with your Dare County Tourism Board meeting recap from the August 15th, 2019 meeting, which took place at the Roanoke Island Welcome Center. First, we heard a presentation from Michael Tillett and the folks from OBX Rod and Custom Festival. This was a first-year festival that happened this past May. They're already hard at work on the 2020 festival, May 2nd and the 1st. So from what we understand, hotel room blocks are already booking up. So get ready. We're looking forward to welcoming those hot rods and custom cars back in our area. Next, we had a report from the Budget and Finance Committee reporting on the occupancy and meals collections information for the month of June. On the occupancy side, we saw a growth of 8%, and for the calendar year to date, we're up 9%. Once again, these are collection figures, revenue figures, and don't indicate the expenses and or profitability. On the meals side, we saw, similarly, we saw positive information for the month of June, up 4%, and then for the calendar year to date, January through June, meals collections are up 10%. So the real meat of the meeting on August 15th was with regard to the Soundside event site. You may recall that at the July meeting, it was a special meeting. We heard a presentation from Charlie Johnson with Johnson Consulting, who updated information, economic impact, site feasibility study for the site. So after spending a little time with that information and in light of the presentation from Charlie, the Tourism Board took 4 action steps at its August meeting. First, the Tourism Board decided to dedicate the site's use to serve as an event site for an indefinite period of time. The previous designation was for a period of at least 10 years. So in essence, the Tourism Board has reset its longer-term vision for the site. The second action item was a desire by the Tourism Board to establish an advisory committee, a working group really, to try and turn that concept of a mixed-use flexible event building into reality. So obviously a lot of work needs to be done, a lot of considerations for Nags Head town ordinances and that particular site and what we're hoping to get out of it, what we can afford to do out there. So this working group, the advisory committee, will report back to the Tourism Board and hope to close that gap between concept to making it a reality. The third item that we talked about and agreed upon was just kind of recognizing that as part of this study and our discussions, just the overwhelming popularity for the idea of a boardwalk that would stretch along that sound side. So the Tourism Board voted unanimously to try and move that as a front burner item and begin planning, design, and construction of a boardwalk if possible. The fourth action item was a unanimous vote to begin to explore the possibility of acquiring additional property to the north, namely Pamlico Jacks. The thought was that that property would make any development of an event building more realistic and easier, just in terms of parking, septic, and other considerations like that. And it simply provides more options for future tourism boards and for the community moving forward. So we'll begin those discussions immediately. So as you can see, a lot of conversation with regard to the Soundside event site, and we're looking forward to really grabbing the ball and running with it now. Appreciate all the hard work from Johnson Consulting, and we look forward to keeping you involved in the process. This concluded the business for the August 15th meeting. Our next meeting is coming up in September 19th, 2000, so it's 9/19/19 at 9 o'clock. All right, hope to see you there. Thanks and take care.
Thank you, Cameron. I'm on the grants committee, and we had a meeting Monday. We had 20 applications for grants. We've been getting more and more of those as time goes on. I think a lot of organizations and municipalities are figuring out, well, why not try at least? There's never enough money to go around, and there's another grant period that we have to fund that comes. We have two a year. One's in September, and there's another one in February, so we can't spend all that money. So we distributed about $195,000 in grants as a result of that meeting on Monday, which has to be approved by the full board, which tourism board meeting is tomorrow, as they said. And yesterday we had, I'm on the steering committee too, we had a steering committee meeting yesterday, and the subject of the Pamlico Jacks property was discussed. That was the main topic of the meeting. And the board steering committee is going to recommend to the full board tomorrow to go ahead and pursue that purchase of that property. So you might be seeing something more on that in the near future. That's about all I have.
Good stuff. Thank you. Good updates. We'll move on to Mayor's agenda. There were 3 proclamations in your packet this evening. The first is declaring October 6th through the 12th as Fire Prevention Week. And also in our packet, and then there might be packets in the back, oh, there's more over here, announcing the open house that the fire department is going to host. It's always a fun event, but that will be Tuesday, October 8th from 5 to 7. This year's theme is Not Every Hero Wears a Cape. Plan and practice your escape. Great theme, and information will be going out to school children as well. Normally there's an initiative around that, but mark this date on your calendars, if you will, for Fire Prevention Weekend for the open house. But with that, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the proclamation declaring October 6th through the 12th as Fire Prevention Week in Killaloe Hills. Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Chief, ahead of time, and then your team for what you do to keep us all safe, and for all of your efforts in the storm as well. The next proclamation in your packet is declaring September 17th through the 23rd as Constitution Week. There's a representative at the county commissioner meeting. They adopted a very similar proclamation at their last meeting. September 17th marks the 232nd anniversary of the drafting of the Constitution of the United States by the Constitutional Convention. So this is raising awareness for Constitution Week. So I'd like to make a motion that we adopt this proclamation declaring September 17th through the 23rd as Constitution Week.
I'll second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. And then the last proclamation in your packet is a proclamation declaring September 2019, oops, we need to make one change on that. I see the typo there, but anyway, as Suicide Prevention Awareness Month and promoting the Chalk Talk campaign. Prior to Dorian coming, the kind of had this grandiose idea that we would do something similar to what the Dare County Commissioners did at their first meeting in September, which Chairman Woodard and Vice Chairman Overman helped kick off September as Suicide Prevention Month by actually taking chalk and writing messages of hope and inspiration on the sidewalk out in front of the commissioners' meeting. I had intended for us to maybe do something similar before our meeting, but honestly, with the events of the past week, that has escaped me. So I'm actually going to give you each a piece of chalk and ask that either maybe on your way out or sometime this month, and hopefully staff won't mind, that we leave messages of inspiration or hope. And basically the whole theme behind Suicide Prevention Awareness Month is letting people know it's okay to ask for help, and it's okay that we need to remove the stigma around mental health and around suicide. So with that, I make a motion that we adopt this proclamation declaring September as Suicide Prevention Awareness Month in Kildare Hills, and encourage you to share some chalk talk in a positive way.
I'll second that.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Great, thank you. And a couple other things, just want to, it's in your seats this evening, just another event to mark your calendar for. This is Wednesday, September 18th from 4:30 to 7 is our annual ice cream social. This is a huge event in the town, really, really popular event. Not only is there ice cream, but there's hot dogs, chips, and drinks, live music by the local school jazz bands, and just a fun time to catch up with neighbors and friends. So please mark your calendar and come out to that fun event next week. I also want to, just a couple of other announcements, storm debris pickup for those either in the audience or watching. This is the time now to be putting your stuff out along the side of the road, not in the road. We had an issue in years past with stuff drifting a little bit too far. There's information on our town website about sorting your storm-related debris into different piles that will make it better and actually more productive for our pickup. So we do need those separated. So if you have questions, you can either call staff or check out the website. We don't have the exact date yet when we'll be collecting the debris, but it will be probably around 2 weeks from now. And we will put information out on the website and on our Facebook page with the specific dates, so you'll have a deadline to make sure you won't miss it. Also, we are really excited to announce that Paws Park, that's our dog park across the way, is officially reopened as of today, as well as the disc golf course. Both of those, through hard work from staff and some volunteers, have worked hard to get those areas up post-storm, and now they're fully open and accessible. So thank you to all of the hands that pitched in to get those back open as quickly as possible. And that's all of my announcements, I think. So, I have one more on this. Yes. So we did discuss through an email the needing to change the date of our October meeting, and originally we were scheduled to meet on Monday, October 14th, but through consensus we want to officially go on record, make a motion to change our meeting date to Wednesday, October 16th at 5:30. So is that still agreeable with the board? Okay, I'll make a motion. Oh, there's a motion to do so. Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion is second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Great. Okay, and with that, then we will move on to town manager's agenda.
This evening.
Taylor Attorney's agenda?
Okay.
Okay.
Me?
Debbie will move to the consent agenda.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. The first item on the consent agenda, the minutes from the August 12th meeting, the monthly report from July. We have budget amendments, number 3, budget amendments to appropriate funds received for recreation facilities for the disc golf course. Number 2 is reporting our encumbrances as of June 30th. We have some amendments to the town code and the personnel policy. The first, complete revisions of Chapter 33, Civil Emergencies. The second, B, Chapter 130, General Offenses, to establish regulations prohibiting open alcohol beverages at the disc golf course. This is to keep in line with our other municipal owned properties where alcohol is not allowed. Item C is amendment to the personnel policy regarding employee compensation and potential FEMA reimbursements. This was a requirement that was needed in order for our personnel policy to meet the required FEMA language that had come out. And the Board of Commissioners had approved this language by consensus prior to the storm, so it is in place. Number 5 is to schedule the public hearings. There's been some talk about earlier this evening. The first is the landscaping requirement, modifying landscaping requirements to include single-family and duplex dwellings with greater than 6,000 square feet lot coverage. And item B is the off-street parking and loading, modifying parking requirements for single-family and duplex dwellings with 11 bedrooms or more. Approval of the consent agenda will set the public hearing for these two items for Wednesday, October the 16th at 5:30. And staff recommends approval of consent agenda as presented. Yes, sir. And number, you're right, thank you. Thank you, Michael. And number 6, this was the waiving of the building permit fees related to the damage caused by Hurricane Dorian. And again, this one, we did have consensus from the board, and so that work started on Monday. So approval of consent agenda will approve this into the recordation of the minutes. So staff recommends approval of consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Okay, there's a motion, is there a second?
Second.
A second, any discussion? All those in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, thank you. Thank you. Okay, this is the second time now that we're coming back to public comment. This is an opportunity for anyone who wishes to address the board either again or for the first time to please do so. We'll just call from the floor. Is there anyone who wishes to speak at this public comment time?
I'd like to say something real quick.
Absolutely. Welcome.
I just want a reminder that September 28th, the Dare County Motorsport Charity Group will be having their toy run coming through our town. It's a big charity, and I just like everybody to know about it. And if you can watch, I think last I heard it's about 150 motorcycles. So, but they do a big fundraising for the underprivileged children in our county. I just want to remind everybody about it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
I wanted to make one other comment I forgot to mention. We were talking about the improvements to the drainage infrastructure. I just wanted to indicate to the board my personal feeling that when we do this and when we talk about making these improvements, one of the first things that we need to consider and make sure that we hold dear to is the promotion of clean water. Any discharges and stuff like that, we want to try to keep it as clean as possible. So we just keep that on the forefront of our minds, you know, when we do any improvements. I just wanted to mention that.
I have one other thing. When you mentioned in this golf course, reminded me, our granddaughter was eligible to vote for the first time, and she lives in Collington. And she was nervous about going, so I said I'd go with her. And I took her over to the Collington Fire Department to vote. And I ran into Lynn Logan. Lynn's son, I forgot Lynn's husband's name.
This
Yeah,
her husband's
their
father.
son Casey, the disc golf course is dedicated to him. It's the Casey R. Logan disc golf course. And she said told me that she gets over there on occasion, and she happened to be there, I think she said a week before the storm. And she said there was a group of people, 20 guys, she said, that came from out of town specifically to play that course. Now, she didn't say whether they stayed over or anything like that, but that's something that, you know, we thought when we were doing it, when Daryl, we talked about doing this, we thought that it would be something that would bring people in from out of town. And that was the proof of it right there. So, and she was very pleased to see that. And she said on occasions when she's been over there, there's always people over there, people waiting to play, and it's very busy. But I was pleased to run into her, and I thanked her again for their generous donation. They got the whole thing.
my son Oscar did Camp Salt the first 2 weeks of August, which is right beside it. So I just would make a point to just kind of take inventory every day. There was multiple groups, tons of cars. You really kind of, I was wowed by the amount of usage. It was very, very encouraging.
I didn't know until the other day when I talked to her that, they're the ones that own Logan's Ice Cream next. Caddy corner from Ace, right? Ace Corner, yeah, I didn't know that. Okay.
It's now the
I
spot.
could put in a plug for that.
Yeah, it's now the spot, but yeah.
Put in a plug for our milkshake maker, assistant chief at the ice cream center.
That's right. All right, well, thank you all. Thanks so much for coming and participating in our meeting. And with that, we need a motion to adjourn. Motion second?
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Great. Thank you. Thank you.